So it's day 52 of the Iran war. Is the fragile ceasefire holding, or are cracks beginning to show? Overnight, the US attacked an Iranian-flagged cargo vessel. How did this come about? Was this just a tactical engagement, or was this part of a much broader strategy? So both America and Iran claim to be able to control the Strait of Hormuz. Now, Iran has a geographic advantage. It operates all the way along the coastline, and therefore it quite clearly can pose any threat to the strait, and it is in control. America, meanwhile, if it was to try to operate in the strait, it would be incredibly vulnerable to attack from Iran. As a result of that, the Americans have set up their blockade in the Arabian Sea, just in the Gulf of Oman, and that's where they're intercepting vessels going in and out of the strait. So Iran did open the Strait of Hormuz, albeit briefly, as we can see from this traffic map. Key to note, though, is the big void here, just north of Oman. That's where Iran had threatened there was a minefield. Not sure if there's actually any mines there or not, but it is enough to stop any traffic going through there. It's also worth noting that originally the Iranians were trying to push traffic north of Larak Island. Here, it's not going that route at all. But if we look a little bit further forward, once the Strait of Hormuz is closed, you can see significantly less traffic passing through. There is still occasional blips of traffic, but Iran has always claimed that the strait is open, but only for its friends. Sky News has been filming inside the Strait of Hormuz. Footage shows cargo vessels clustered along established shipping lanes. Sky News data and forensics team identified some of the vessels that passed through the strait. This is the B-Star 1, flagged to St Kitts and Nevis, and is owned by a Dubai company. According to AIS data, it is headed towards Oman. This is a general cargo ship called Vento, which is flagged to Comoros, and this, the Iran-flagged craft called the Nezamig Ganjavi 6, is headed towards Iran. The US blockade has now been in place for a couple of days. US Central Command claims that 23 vessels have been intercepted and turned back during that time. So why was it that 4 Iranian vessels made a run at the blockade? One of them got intercepted, 3 made it through. The Tusker, an Iranian-flagged cargo vessel, left a port in Malaysia on the 12th of April, making its way to an Iranian port. It was intercepted by the blockade, but it did not respond to radio threats from Central Command.
Vacate your engine room. Vacate your engine room.
And eventually the USS Spruance ended up firing warning shots. Over a period of 6 hours, the Tusker still did not respond and still did not stop. As a result, the Spruance opened up its 5-inch gun, targeted the engine compartment, and the ship was rendered powerless. That left the US Marine Corps operating off the USS Tripoli to now mount a daring helicopter operation at night onto the deck to not only board the vessel, but also to seize it. So why did the Iranians decide to run the blockade? Why did one of the vessels not stop, even though it was a credible threat from US warships over a period of 6 hours? What seems very likely is the Iranians were trying to provoke America into taking military action, because as soon as they ended up firing on a commercial ship, the Iranians immediately threatened retaliation, and they also complained about the US approach to negotiations, claiming that they were constantly changing their approach, they were inconsistent, but also that the use of threats was not helpful. So where does all this leave the peace talks between President Trump of America and Mujtaba Khamenei of Iran? President Trump has threatened that if there's no progress made, he will revert back to the bombing campaign, bombing the bridges and energy infrastructure. But of course, the harsh reality so far, that hasn't delivered strategic success for America, and it's not entirely clear by reverting to such a military campaign that a different result will be achieved. But President Trump needs an off-ramp. He needs it pretty urgently. He needs talks to prevail and some form of negotiation. And threats are only going to work against Iran if Iran is prepared to surrender. It's pretty clear that Mujtaba Khamenei is not in the place ready to surrender. He has leverage in these talks, and therefore there will have to be some form of negotiation. Both sides clearly need a deal. But if a deal isn't reached, if President Trump does actually see through on his threats and resume a military campaign, that could take a long time. So are we simply seeing a bit of last-minute brinkmanship where we actually get a peace deal negotiated soon? In other words, the beginning of the end. Or are we going to see a resumption of a long military campaign? In other words, simply the end of the beginning.